Hello, and you're welcome again to another conversation on sustainable living with ChangeMakers. We're looking back to the past to see what we can learn about helping the planet into the future. And today we're going to be talking to Grace Burke, who was reared in County Galway. Grace is going to be talking about her life in education and growing up in rural Galway.
I'm Grace Burke. I live in a little village called Spinach in County Galway. Well, I went to a very small country two-teacher school. I remember the cold of it an awful lot and not being allowed to wear our coats. We just had one fire and the teacher stood in front of that most of the day.
And did you have far to walk to school, Grace?
We walked 2.5 miles, but on a wet day, my dad took us and there could be anything from any number from 8 to 10 in the car. He would pick up others along the way. That's how, if it was raining only. But then we got bikes later on and we'd cycle. We had very small playground outside with lots of children. But you know, I never remember having an accident or anybody running into anybody. We just did with what we had, you know. Right. We were happy in it, very happy in it. So you know, if we got a new topper to top the pencils, a new sharpener, if we got that, we were delighted going up to school to show it off. There was no secondary schools that time, you see, or no free travel. So we had to go to a building.
Can I just ask you, you said there was no free travel, Grace. Was there free education when you started?
Oh, not at all. No. Oh, no. There was free. No.
So education was only for those who could pay for it. Yeah.
I don't really know how he did it, but he sent us all to secondary school. It was a boarding school in Tuam.
Right.
And I didn't enjoy that at all because we hadn't a great basic education. He didn't do very much with us, and there were others starting off, and they knew the geography of Ireland and the history of Ireland and all that, and we didn't know that at all. But we got on fine all the same.
Yeah.
Like that now, we didn't have much in, it was very stern and we had to have our breakfast in silence. It was like, it was more like a convent, I suppose. Went right through to leaving and then I entered the convent myself.
All right. That was very common in those days for both nuns and brothers to recruit from the school and all, yeah.
No, but anyway, I did, and I was 2 years there then, and I went to New Zealand. The Archbishop at the time was in charge of all the convents and schools, and he wouldn't let anybody who was trained in any sphere to go abroad. He wanted to keep all the ones that money was spent in this country. So I went to New Zealand, and my father got very sick and I was very attached to him. So I came home after 3 years and went to Carysford.
So just go back a step there. You went to New Zealand. That must have been a bit of a travel adventure.
Oh, it was big, but it was very exciting for me.
How did you travel?
By plane.
Yeah.
By plane, yeah.
Do you remember much about the plane trip, like compared to these days?
I do. It was all so new to me. Sure, I'd never been on a plane, never, and I had to go myself. We went by America because I was to meet another nun there, but it all worked out okay. But I was very timid, and I wouldn't say anything to an air hostess or anybody beside me. It was the first year they were taking mature students in St. Pat's. Right. So I went there and trained and then got a job here in the local, and got married and got a job here in the local school. And I was 33 years there and retired 15 years ago.
And just back to St. Pat's, were there many women in St. Pat's at that stage? Because I would know St. Pat's as for training men.
You would, yes, of course. Well, it was the first year that they took mature students, we were called, you know, that didn't go in straight after leaving cert.
Aye.
But they had taken girls, I think, the year before. Now, I loved St. Pat's. It was so different to anything that I had come up against before that. you know.
Yeah, but more free.
Treated as an adult, you know.
Yes. Let's go back to when you were in primary school and clothes and things like that. How often did you get them, or what?
So we were we got a new coat if we needed it when the cattle were sold in October. We got new shoes when the lambs were sold. You know, you waited for everything. Now, if they want something, get into the car and go to Galway and get it.
Or just click the button and wait for it to be delivered.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you got clothes when there was money.
Yes, and when you wouldn't have two coats, you just have the one. You know, I even noticed that in school now before I retired. There'd be jackets left there during the holidays, and I'd be saying, you know, why don't I need these jackets? Because we had only one and we wore it until it was see-through.
Yeah. And I know, I don't know, did you have the habit, have you brothers and sisters, Grace?
I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters, yes.
All right. So I know I had 4 brothers and a wee sister, but I mean, it was very common in our house, because we were about 2 years apart, to get the older brothers' clothes passed down, coats and trousers and all that.
And my eldest sister, now she was a lot older than me, she was 11 years older than me. I remember getting my mother getting a dressmaker beside us with one of her coats to make it fit me
take it in and
to take it in, and I wore it and I was delighted with it.
Were you taken to town to get your clothes, or were they bought for you, or how often would that have happened?
On a Saturday, very seldom.
Yeah.
Very seldom. Not once. Maybe once in 3. Now we did have that time we had, my uncle had a shop 3 miles from us, and they did socks and underwear, and as well as the grocery.
Yeah.
And if you needed little things like that, now socks I can remember, or stockings as we used to call them.
Yeah.
I remember getting them there. And they did shoes and Wellingtons, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We would get them there when you needed them, not, you wouldn't have 40 pairs of shoes hanging around.
Well, just think back at how many pairs of shoes, or what would you have had, actually?
We'd have one for school and one for Sunday.
Yeah.
One for Sunday.
And maybe your Wellingtons.
And the Wellingtons, exactly.
Yeah. That was it.
We didn't have a shoes to go with each outfit like the kids have now.
No. And then there was, as you say, the local seamstress or people then who would, and probably a shoemaker too.
I think so too. I remember my father bringing boots for the boys to get boots sold. Of course, they'd always sold the shoes, put a new sole or a new heel, you know.
Yeah.
Now they're out.
That's it. And there weren't many charity shops then, no.
No, and anyway, they'd be so well worn.
I know. Nobody would take them. I know. Yeah, no, that's the thing I always remember, is getting the hand-downs. And actually I used to look forward to it, because there was something about getting your big brother's coat, you know. You admired it, you thought this was great, and you thought, oh, now I'm growing up nearly. It was a lovely thing to get something. It wasn't any, and of course, my mother darned everything.
Oh, I can see her with the sock inside in a polish box.
Yes.
You know, and she's darning. Oh, I can see it so well.
I know.
Everything was mended and sheets were mended. My mother never sewed on the machine, the sewing machine. But when we had a Singer sewing machine, and on a wet day, when there wouldn't be much to do outside, my father would mend sheets and anything that had to be mended.
I know.
He sewed.
Yeah, because your mother and father, like my own, probably they grew up through the war when there was very, very little. Very little. Yeah.
I couldn't waste a thing now this minute. It's so inbuilt in me that I just couldn't waste anything.
Yeah. No, I know that. Yeah, and I suppose you remember too, when it comes to shopping and things like that, taking bottles back and money back on things and all that, you know.
or saving them or using them for to be always used. There was a use found for everything.
That's right.
There was a use found for everything.
Yeah.
Everything was grown at home. We had cabbage and carrots and turnips and beetroot and lettuce, and we only bought flour, tea, sugar, salt. They were about the 4 things we only bought. Now, and meat, of course, sometimes, not all the time.
Yeah.
We'd kill a pig for the meat and share it around with all the village, and they would share it with us then when they killed the pig and all that. But all the other food, they made sure that we had carrots and parsnips, and everything was so fresh. Yes. That was done all the time. It was fantastic. You wouldn't go to the shop for.
No.
And if you ran out of salt, you'd go next door for a grain of salt until you'd go to the shop. Or if you ran out of sugar, they'd come to us, imagine, for a little.
For a cup of sugar.
When I tell ours that, they're just so amazed. Go to the neighbour for a bowl of sugar.
Oh, sure. Of course. Well, I remember it sort of well because when I was growing up here in Clonmany and Donegal, we actually had a shop. And when most of the people that we looked after didn't have transport, so if you lived 4 or 5 miles away, what we used to do is I would head out initially in a shop van. We had a van that went round the countryside, and we took everything with us, and I'd spend the whole of Saturday, when I'd be at school at this time, but the whole of Saturday was spent traveling out around with tea and paraffin oil and sugar and tobacco. But then when that sort of stopped and more people got transport, what I used to do then, my father liked to look after people. He would send me out on a Friday to visit about 20 houses around the parish, and I would take a note from them. Then I'd come home, and on Saturday morning, I'd pack it into boxes, head out in the car and deliver then the next day. But there were some people, even though I would go every Friday to get the note, I knew that the same 4 or 5 things would be on the note. I didn't have to go there, but you had to go for the chat and the social bit of it, you know. And it was, you're right, it was tea and sugar and salt and maybe paraffin and tobacco if there was men in the house too. That'd be it. That'd be what they would buy. And quite often, and you probably did it at home too, quite often, I would come home with money, but I'd also come home with maybe 5 or 10 dozen eggs. Swapped.
Yes, yeah.
And they would be swapped for it, yeah. Do you remember then when you first encountered, frozen or dried or tinned food and, the sort of stuff that people are, do you remember that maybe when you went to
Dublin? I do remember one incident. My father went to my uncle's shop and he came home and he said, "This is new," he said. "It's soup in a packet." I can see him holding up the soup packet. And we had a fire, a grate. That time we hadn't the aga. And now I was very small. And I remember we were all sitting around and my mother getting the saucepan. And all you had to do, she said, was put in water and heat it up. And I remember, I don't know, I thought it was only one packet, but I don't know, but we all got soup anyway.
Right.
And I remember my father saying, "There's eating and drinking in that." And we thought, soup in a packet.
Yeah.
And we'd have the new potatoes and we might get, that she might put down a pot of those before we'd go to bed.
Yeah.
And we'd new potatoes and butter and milk.
Aye. Lovely.
But we had our own milk too.
And who did the gardening? Like, I know that's not sort of the farming. The gardening was a separate bit sometimes to the farm.
My mother didn't. My father did it as well. But when we were all small, he had a workman, Pat, the workman, lovely man, and he helped him doing everything.
Right.
So really, because there were 7 of us in it,
Yeah.
And on top of doing all his own tillage, he went out and ploughed for people, and many a time didn't get any money.
No.
But lots of times did. He would go out and do it for people.
That was sort of community, particularly in rural farming areas. That was done. You never asked about like taking home turf or
Yes,
time or things.
and help, yeah.
Everybody would help, yeah. It was different, all right, yeah. And did you have turf, or what did you burn at home, Grace?
We went to the bog, yes,
yeah.
Turf, the whole time turf. We went to the bog in the summertime and brought a big picnic and boiled the kettle and boiled eggs and out in the open, so they can't believe that kind of thing now,
No. And the work. Yeah, it was hard work and long work, but if the weather was good, it was very satisfying.
But people were very content. Yeah. We were so content. I can't remember wanting anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, they had no television to show us things that we could have, but and the people were so content. They did their work and they ate, and it was just a great time to live, I think.
Aye. And sort of going through your teens and things like that, what about the social life and things like that around where you lived? Of course you were at boarding school, but during the summer or even at boarding school? And
we had a cinema about 5 miles from us.
All right.
And maybe at Christmas, I can remember at Christmas. Now what we saw, I don't know, but I remember going to a film, and it was big news that time. I remember my aunt writing home from England, and you went to the cinema. It was huge that time.
Yes.
Now, it wouldn't be full by any means. The cinema wouldn't, and I can't remember the film, but
I know. What age would that have been, Grace?
I'd have been 16, I'd say.
Before you went to the cinema?
Yes. Oh, yes. Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's they're going now at 2 and 3. A little black and white television. And we'd sit there, the minute it would come on, it would open at 5 o'clock. And we would sit there, I'd say, most of the night until it was off.
Yes.
Such thing as picking out a program or watching one program and leaving the rest. It was left on there. Well, I know for a long time after we got it anyway, it was left on. But she used to do all the washing on a Monday morning, with the washing board,
right,
and scrubbing, and we always had clean sheets, and they'd be out on the line, and that was hard work now, and it was always my mother that used to do that.
Yes,
that was a job for the women.
Yes, they were, yeah.
And she'd boil up the water there, and
that would be a whole Monday morning activity, boiling and getting water.
Half the day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. You were outside, you were eating fresh food, you were exercising,
You were getting dirty, and you had built up an immunity to these things.
Absolutely.
They see a speck on them now, they have to clean their hands. And well, I know nowadays, but no, we were never, I can't remember ever being sick for long, or I remember getting the polio injection, the vaccine, as they say.
Remember that, do you? Yeah.
I do. I remember he came to the school to collect me and bring me down. I suppose because his own sister had polio for so long. So we got that. But no, I don't remember any other diseases or sicknesses. I remember an odd cold, but nothing major. No. And we were out so much. Yes. We were out on hay, we were in the bog. We had no playgrounds. We had to use our imagination. They have no imagination now when they go into these playgrounds. Everything is set for them. They know they climb up here and they climb down there, and they turn something else, but it's all done. They don't even have to think. I think the contentment. I think people were so content. What is it that's causing this discontent? It's the want and the want and the comparison of between them and others. They all want to be as good as the next one. I don't ever remember saying somebody, my next door neighbour has whatever, I'd like it as well.
Yeah.
You know, we were just more content with what we had.
Yes.
And we waited for things. We waited. We understood that we'd get it in a month's time, or people going back now to grow their own vegetables and all that. That's
great.
Good.
It's great. There's a lot of it happening actually around us here in Inishowen and the North Donegal. I know quite a lot of groups getting together now to like plant trees, community gardening, you know, wanting to learn how to do it, bringing their children along to learn how to do it. And then I meet young students in transition year, you know, who want to do stuff both for the environment, but also they want to do stuff for clothing and stuff like that. They want to, they're interested in the problem and trying to what's their role in solving it, you know. So little things, and these conversations, I think the idea is to let them see that there was a life when this was okay and this was normal, you know. That their needs and wants weren't there, and yet people were quite content.
Exactly.